We spend a massive amount of time in these explainers talking about those giant multi-million-dollar machines that etch modern microchips. But today, we're going to bypass those famous machines entirely. Instead, we're taking a look at something incredibly tiny, yet arguably just as powerful. We are talking about a single drop of amber liquid that actually makes the world's most advanced chips possible. So, let's start with a really simple premise. Every advanced chip on Earth begins not with a massive piece of hardware, but with a fluid. Just picture a near-perfect silicone wafer, spinning slowly. A single drop of amber liquid falls onto it and spreads out into a film that is thinner than a soap bubble. Actually, it's thinner than a single wavelength of light. This isn't just any everyday chemical. This is, without a doubt, the most important ink in the world.
Section 1. The ink that draws chips.
Now, when extreme ultraviolet light from those famous Dutch ASML machines hits a wafer, it doesn't just do the work all on its own. It's this liquid called photoresist that actively catches the light. It's a highly sophisticated, light-sensitive formulation. So wherever the light lands, the resist's molecular chemistry literally flips, becoming either soluble or insoluble. Then when the wafer is developed, billions of physical circuit lines are just left behind. You have to mix this stuff atom by atom, with purity measured in parts per trillion. Without this ultra-pure liquid catching the light, those famous lithography machines are essentially just multi-million-dollar paperweights.
Section 2. Japan's 90% monopoly.
If you look at the market breakdown for this stuff, you are not going to find some nicely diversified, globalized supply chain. Not at all. Instead, what you have is an absolute lock on the industry by just a handful of Japanese chemical companies. Tokyo Oka Kogyo, or TOK, holds around 30% of the market. JSR has roughly 27%. You add in Shin-Etsu, Sumitomo, and Fujifilm, and boom, they completely dominate the formulation of this absolutely vital material.
Think about that for a second. 90% or even more of the world's supply of high-end photoresist comes from just one single country. It doesn't matter if a leading fab is printing cutting-edge chips in Taiwan, Arizona, or South Korea, the ink they fundamentally rely on comes from Japan. And honestly, it isn't just the photoresist. It's the ultra-pure hydrogen fluoride used to clean the wafers and the fluorinated polyamides in the displays. The exact same short list of Japanese firms dominates the whole shebang.
Section 3. The 2019 dress rehearsal. So what actually happens when the tap turns off? Well, back in July 2019, right in the middle of a political dispute, Tokyo decided to tighten export licenses to South Korea on 3 of these critical chemicals. Now, on paper, this was framed as just a routine paperwork change. But in reality, it was a massive shot across the bow of the entire memory chip industry. You had memory giants like Samsung and SK Hynix, who together make around 70% of the world's DRAM and half its NAND flash, suddenly forced to face this terrifying reality. They literally couldn't be sure if their chemicals would arrive on time. The immediate downstream impact of that was just staggering. By simply delaying some paperwork, they didn't even issue a full embargo. Japan's exports of ultra-pure hydrogen fluoride to Korea collapsed by nearly 90% in the following months. And considering Japan also supplied an estimated 94% of the world's fluorinated polyamide, the threat didn't even have to be fully executed to send a massive jolt of panic straight through the boardrooms in Seoul. As one analyst brilliantly put it, you can be a memory superpower, command the most advanced fabs on the planet, and still be held hostage by the chemistry of the ink. Now, South Korea survived. They filed a World Trade Organization complaint, they rushed to qualify new sources from the US, Taiwan, and Belgium, and they built up emergency stockpiles. But the brutal lesson really stuck. You cannot simply swap chemical suppliers the way you swap a bolt. Qualifying a new resist for a leading-edge line can take a year or more of testing. Why? Because a single molecule of contamination ruins a wafer worth thousands of dollars.
Section 4. Nationalizing tomorrow's chip chemistry.
It is completely fascinating to watch how this strategy unfolds. In 2019, they test the chokepoint. By 2021, they look toward the next generation of chips. We're talking 2 nanometers and smaller, which requires a totally new kind of wet chemistry called metal oxide res, built around tin oxide. The pioneer of this tech was actually an American company out of Oregon called Impria. Well, JSR swooped in and bought them for $514 million. Suddenly, the world's leading next-generation extreme ultraviolet chemistry is folded right into a Japanese portfolio. And finally, we get to 2024, where Japan takes the biggest player entirely private. What's really wild is how quietly this final move played out.
On June 25, 2024, JSR was officially removed from the Tokyo Stock Exchange. They were acquired by the Japan Investment Corporation, which is a state-backed fund for roughly 900 billion yen, or about 6.3 billion US dollars. The official reason they gave was patient capital, basically aiming to free the company up to make decade-long bets without quarterly shareholder pressure. But the actual real-world impact? National control of a strategic choke point. Tokyo quietly did to photoresist exactly what China does to rare earths. They identified an irreplaceable asset and placed it under direct national control, completely under the radar, without sparking a single major headline about economic coercion.
And the strategy actually goes even further into a complete geographic lockdown. For decades, the resist just stayed in Japan and shipped out. But now, it's moving. JSR is building its very first photoresist plant in Taiwan, literally right next to TSMC. TOK and JSR are pouring money into new lines in South Korea as well. The surface goal, I'll tell you, is de-risking supply chains, putting the supply directly close to the demand. But the strategic reality is incredibly clever. By planting their chemical facilities right next to the world's leading fabs, Japan ensures this choke point just follows the customer home. It locks in the customers completely and totally preempts any rival domestic resist industries from ever starting up.
Section 5. Molecule versus the machine.
When you look at this, the sheer asymmetry is just mind-blowing. On one side, you have the photogenic lithography machine, one Dutch company, highly visible, impossible to bomb or easily copy, and ultimately a one-time purchase for a fab. Governments globally spend hundreds of billions of dollars chasing these machines and building the massive factories to house them. But on the other side, the photoresist molecule. One country's chemistry, it is totally invisible, it costs basically a rounding error in a massive fab's budget, but it is a daily dependency that never ever ends. If a fab runs out of this invisible Japanese ink, the whole multi-billion-dollar operation simply stops within days. So what's the ultimate takeaway here? The next time someone tells you the chip war is all about a single Dutch machine, remember the bottle sitting right next to it. The true map of global chip power isn't just mechanical, drawn up in machines and concrete factories. It is deeply, fundamentally chemical. As analysts increasingly flag photoresist, and not just lithography, as the bottleneck that really bites the hardest, we kind of have to ask, is this silent monopoly on chemistry the hardest wall of all for China to climb? Sure, nations can multi-pattern their way around missing UV machines. They can subsidize new fabs, and they can successfully copy chip designs. But formulating hyper-pure resist, that is a profound chemistry problem that requires decades of accumulated, atom-by-atom know-how. It really leaves us to wonder, who truly holds the ultimate power over the future of technology? The one who builds the pen, or the one who controls the ink?